Winlock, here we go. He had an amazing presentation yesterday at the conferences on the teeth marks and the bone stacks and everything. Just absolutely amazing. So he's going to delve in deeper and enlighten us with some more and some other things he's working with and interact with the audience. So Mitchell Townsend, come on up.
Oh yeah, let me adjust that.
Right here.
As far as how
That's good. Testing. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. So, as all of you know, I'm a flesh and blood guy. I'm a carbon-based life form scientist. However, I believe in the scientific method, and part of what we're going to be doing today is, again, going to reiterate the scientific method and how you go about actually proving something academically. So as we apply the same framework, educational framework and research frameworks to zooarchaeology or teeth marks and bones, okay, very simply, we can use that same standard process to examine anything. Behavior, unexplained phenomenon, and in this case, I believe unexplained phenomenon is just things that we haven't been able to explain yet, right? I believe science will actually be able to explain everything eventually. And that's part of the process of gathering knowledge, getting conclusions, and doing analysis, and then presenting them at conferences like this for analysis so people can actually participate in the scientific process. So one of the things we're going to do today is going to run this like a class, okay, rather than just a seminar or a speech or a presentation. I'm going to present 4 or 5 pieces of very interesting information for you, including video and photographic form, as well as some stencil stones and some pictographic stones that I just recovered from an archaeological dig within the last 2 years that not only link Bigfoot to extraterrestrials, but also show what I interpret as starships, organic starships, star charts, individual ships moving along an energy grid that we think originates around the pyramids of Egypt. And I have archaeological artifacts that will reflect that. Pictures as well in those binders over there, as well as the actual stones themselves of what I interpret as organic starships, collecting other organisms and processing the body parts and spitting them out, and I'll demonstrate that as well over there. So let's get started with this. Is there any questions of me and my background? Do you guys want me to repeat that? Who saw my lecture yesterday? Everybody? So I don't have to go over who I am and where I came from. No. Perfect. This is what we're going to do today, class. We're going to take this opportunity for the next 60 minutes to go on a learning adventure. Okay, so the title of this learning adventure is Stargate Sasquatch. And what I'm going to be trying to do today is put a scientific frame and a theory that I'm going to put forth to help explain some of the unexplained phenomenon that we've all been experiencing in our research areas. Over the last day and a half, you've been able to listen to everyone else explain in their own words what types of phenomena that they've been experiencing, like cloaking, like zapping, like unexplained occurrences, astronomical alliances, UFOs, proximity in the same locations. We've seen them ourselves. I'm also going to give you the location I do my research so you can go down there yourself and try to mimic the exact same processes. I'll also give you free invitations to the expeditions I lead with my students from the college, where I take them to the same place and you get to interact with Sasquatch up close and personal. I call them down in large numbers after the snows melt around July. And for a final bonus for coming all the way out here, I'm going to give every person in this room who doesn't already have one of the artifacts from my archaeological dig that demonstrates some of the technologies that I'm going to be expressing today. Okay? Who all has stones? I gave already a few of them out. Already? I think they're what I'm interpreting them as almost quantum signaling devices. Okay? That we can concentrate our intentions and get responses back, and also develop advanced level research skills in the field because we're drawing much more activity and phenomenon in towards us. And so I have at least one student here in the classroom that can attest to his own work and how he interprets these stones is his usage of them. Okay? So it's not just me. I'm going to show you 2 series of photographs of what I think are Stargate openings in night and day, and I'm also going to show you a full motion HD infrared video of what I think is an active Stargate opening over my house on the 4th of July in 2017. So, this is what we're going to be looking at here. I'm going to pull this out a little bit because I hate standing over by the podium. I'd really like to run around. So, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to talk to you about Bigfoot City. It's Bumping Lake. It's just over the side of the pass here. And I'm going to be discussing some of the unexplained phenomena that have occurred to me while doing research over there for Flesh and Blood research. Once again, I'm also the archaeological and historical representative for the U.S. Forest Service, for the Gifford Pinchot Forest, which is just this side of it. I think that's the Wenatchee National Forest, but still have privileges over there. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of my archaeological site and some of the samples that have come out of them. I'm going to link them to Bigfoot, and I'm going to show you a few sample pictures and also give you some links that you can look online at some of my most recent interviews, and you can see some of the about 10 repetitive examples of these starships that I'm talking to you about, and also these energy grids. I have the other photographs over in those binders, so when we're finished, you guys are welcome to come over and I'll point everything out to you, okay? Then we're going to take a look at some of the examples, and we're going to talk about the theories. So part of this is a theory that I'm going to weave around to try to explain what we're seeing in the scientific format, and I'm going to try to bring quantum physics down to where we can understand it very simply, okay? Because obviously this is in a university situation. So I want you people to enjoy it and understand what we're talking about. I encourage questions, all right? At any time, just stop me, we'll stop and we'll answer the question. No problem. At the end, we're going to talk about it, okay? I'm going to tell you what it is, and I'm going to tell you what I think we should do as we move forward educationally and speaking in a common language. Your role is not to just sit there. Your role is to help me examine this information as we go through and form your own opinions and your own questions, okay? And what you're seeing. You may maybe not be seeing what I'm seeing. And this is part of the scientific process, is we're going through a process of trying to understand this data and come up with some explanations besides we don't know, or it's paranormal, or it's woo. That's really not good enough for me or the rest of the world. So what I'm trying to do is look for scientific theories that would explain what we're seeing in the field, okay? It's just called comparative analysis. In this regard, what we're looking at is a process, we talked about that with the bones, of assumptions, evidence, and proof. In this case, we have some data that I've been able to collect, and we've put together a theory called quantum light photon theory, and it will explain, we'll get into that further, I don't want to hit that up front, because I want you to be focused on the evidence that you're looking at, okay, instead of trying to, what did he say, or what did that mean? Okay, I'll explain. Then what we do is I do a comparative analysis and frame the data collection. At that point we go into and put it together in some kind of form, and this is the first time that this presentation has been given, and a lot of this material has never been introduced to the world. It's not on YouTube or the internet or anywhere else, so you'll be seeing it today for probably the first time. Alright, as we look at these atmospheric disturbances, one of the common denominators is sound and light. Okay, and we'll look at the light aspects of it at this point. So quantum light propulsion theory tells us very simply that matter, or electrons, neutrons, and protons, and light, which are photons, behave at the smallest level like waves, like imagined waves on the ocean. Okay, instead of a straight beam, they actually oscillate within what we're being able to measure. But when we get them down to the lowest level of measurability, called the quanta, okay, we realize that they actually operate in wave form, including moving against each other, overlapping each other, okay? And that gives us an opportunity to look at different types of light disturbances in lenses and other types of phenomena to see if those disturbances match the characteristics or the behavior of those light beams as they move across and overlap each other, okay? So very simply, as these waves move around each other, they create different light spectrum changes or characteristics, from light bright to nothing and dark, even less than black, okay? It's like a void of light or an absence of light. So bright to avoidance or absence. So when two waves come together, remember they're doing waves, when you see the tops of the waves come together, you're going to see the brightest possible light, all right, in that transmission. when those waves are moving against each other and you see one side has a peak and one side has a trough, you're going to see the absence of light, the darkest part of it, or a void of light. Okay? You're going to see the spectrum. But that's the light variation, how that wave theory works. Now, as the waves moves through an infinite space, it can actually move at the lowest quantum level through solids. Okay, it's called quantum tunneling or photon tunneling. So, for example, the sun. The sun, if this room had no windows and it was really hot outside, it would start to raise because the energy is going through that solid. The sun is the largest generator of quantum light photons in the universe. All of the starlights and the sun. All of the energy that we experience around us is all as a direct result of the sun's quantum photon energy. Okay? It's a natural occurring process that we see every day. It drives all systems on this planet. Alright? Now we know that even at the lowest possible level, solids, or solidified elements, which are electrons, protons, and neutrons, can actually be quantumly commingled, remember, with the light source, okay, the photons. So now not only can you tunnel across infinite space and solids light information, but you can also transmit solids, teleportation. Okay? Light mixed with quantum entanglement of electrons can teleport through any substance at exactly an instantaneous time frame. Solids. Okay, and there's three major kinds of quantum tunneling. One is through a wormhole. Okay, and I'll go over this quickly. The other one is like a disruptor or a disruption of your atomic structure and then reassembled some other place. That's your Star Trek variety, the beam me up Scotty kind. And the other is where the body or the structure or the message is scanned and then holographically reproduced somewhere else. So a lot of the images that we're seeing on these photographs that you can't see with the naked eye, they could be holographic projections from some other place using this light transmission tunneling theory. Okay? They could also be solids, okay, transmitted in the same transportation fashion via light energy. Alright? I know it sounds kind of complicated, but very simply, light can move energy. It can also move mass through solids and make it appear anywhere in any form of solidity, from an illusion to a solid form. Alright? From a holograph to solid. So, there's your first major theory in how they're moving mass, or just a holograph. Alright? Okay, Bigfoot City, like I said, is just over the mountain here at Bumping Lake. These are some of the atmospheric disturbances and other unexplained activity that I've experienced while researching over there with my students and by myself and with some relatives. I take rock and roll bands over there and other celebrities and stuff for their own guaranteed thing, but we do it quietly. We don't put it on YouTube, and we don't do a lot of videos or anything like that, because I'm about education. And for me, education is the goal, and it is the reward. So we've all talked about, and they have the cloaking, that they're hearing something but they can't see it, or they're seeing something, or a one-track line that disappears. And I've seen the same thing. I was over there one time in a sniper suit, using these people from BFRO as bait. These three ladies, to see if I could examine some and observe some phenomena around them. So they're trying to draw something in, and I'm trying to watch them as bait and see if I can project on top of that. Well, I fell asleep that night and just kind of dozed off, and I had squirreled myself down in all these blackberry brambles, and there was no any way anything could approach me from about 20 feet up to me without making a noise or having to go through the bushes, let alone find me in the middle of the night, 8 miles into the mountains, right? In full sniper gear. Something hit me in the back of the head in the middle of the night, about 4 o'clock in the morning, with a stick. Couldn't have been thrown, it had to have been poked, because I had my sniper veil over my head. And it hit me again, and I was like wide awake. And I had sleeping with my pistol on my chest, all cocked and loaded. And as soon as I popped the safety off, something went tearing off behind me through the sticker bushes. So something had found me in the middle of the night, snuck up on me, and hit me in the back of the head, and was able to escape, and I couldn't see anything. In the middle of the night. It had to have been within a few feet, because it was so close to the sticker bushes, right? Now, as I was coming back in the sniper gear, I started hearing a conversation of what Ron Moorhead's sounds described between two people, and I thought they were just arguing right there sitting next to the road. And when I walked up to it, because I was looking like a bush, right? Doing what a bush does, real slow. And I'm sitting there, and I can't see anything, but I can hear a conversation, just like a normal conversation. Two guys kind of having a stroll or talking about chess or something. And the first thought was, what language is this? I haven't really, I've traveled all over the world and lived all over the world, but I've never heard anything like that. It kind of sounded to me like a guttural French, almost. But it was really, came from the diaphragm, and it had volume and timbre. And my hair even stands up just even talking about it, because it's such an impression on me. And I kind of stepped a little closer, and unfortunately I stepped on a stick and it snapped. And it went quiet. But that was probably from me to you, from the sound source, and I'm looking right at it like this. And I can't see anything. Okay, so that was my first real experience that something else is happening here, some kind of other phenomenon, because I did 2 tours overseas, 3 tours overseas. I did my last 2 Special Forces as an advisor. It was infantry. And I know what camouflage is, right? And I know what advanced technology usage is, and this is way beyond that. Something I've never seen before. All right, here's the other list of a few other things. The rocks, the red eyes. I call them in this quarry, and there's no vegetation, so they can't hide. But yet you can see their eyes. And they use what's called a game finder, a game tracker, and it tracks infrared signatures, body heat signatures. So I can get an instrument reading that they're there, but all you're seeing is red eyes. And this outline shimmering effect. Like a movie screen that has crystalline structures in it up in the mountains when it's cold and the light shines through in the middle of the morning. Atmospheric disturbance. Remember quantum light. Remember the band between light and dark. Okay, it can be projected anywhere and under any circumstances. So maybe this atmospheric anomalies that I'm looking at are bendings or ripples in the organizational light structures that we're involved in here on this planet. Okay, we don't know. But we do know that it's not ordinary, right? It's outside what I'm used to looking at. All right, and then it just moved on from there. We've had a UFO encounter there as well. There was a UFO that came down when I was with a rock group called Metal Church. Actually, they're on tour right now. And it looked like an old, the old Star Trek thing, the gold-looking triangle band thing that they had on their chest, the little emblem. And it came down over the sky, and it kind of went zigzag, and then it stopped over Bumpkin Lake and hovered, right? And then it kind of went down into the lake, past our point of view. But about that time, 9 SUVs full of federal agents come bombing up the road towards where the craft had gone into the water, or had gone down below the horizon. So we weren't the only ones out there looking for this kind of phenomenon, right? And as I know, as the Forest Service, we're actively searching out this information, but these were federal agents from some other agency. All right, so this is a very popular spot. Point being is we're looking at a number of different types of similar phenomenon that other people have described as well. The last one was pretty important, was in 2017. I was in the same place. I had 4 students, and one of them got what they call zapped, and it was just fine. We're having a conversation, and then the next thing you know, the dude's eyes rolled back and he passed out, or he fell down on the ground and he just collapsed, like he'd been poleaxed, hit with a hammer in the head. And I caught his head before it hit the rocks. And I'm sitting down on the rocks, and the other 3 students are just flabbergasted. They can't believe it. And I asked this guy, I said, so where were you? Where were you? And he goes, what are you talking about? I go, you just passed out. He goes, no, I didn't. I go, we're sitting on the ground. I got my arm around you. Here's your glasses, by the way. And so it happened right in front of us, instantaneously. This guy went unconscious. Again, is that an expression of some kind of disruptor device? In the Army, before I left 50 years ago, we used crowd control devices that were sonic disruptors, we call them, and they messed with your equilibrium, so you became sick. And the only way you could become unnauseous was to move away from the sound source. All right, so think about that same technology as a directed beam into somebody. You'd have a similar reaction to it, okay? So we're looking at these types of activities, and I'm saying, okay, we have to take a look at this. But we need to superimpose scientific principles on this so we can at least try to understand, compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, right? So let's talk about this archaeology site, because it's a wild card here, but I was actually led out there from some premonition. I have no idea what it was. But I went to this spot, and there was these little rocks on a huge beach of about 150 yards long by about 15 yards wide. There used to be a major river, and the river had changed direction and had excavated all of these artifacts, and they were laying on the beach. But they were glowing, and I couldn't rationalize it. I was like, why are all these one specific stones that have some kind of aura around them? So I went around and started picking them up, and I collected a whole bunch of them, and I noticed that they had different pictures that I associate with Ice Age, Mastodon, a pterosaur, which was like a pterosaur that was extinct here about 60,000 years ago. So I thought, well, maybe this is a prehistoric archaeological dig of a Native American depository of information in rock form. Because remember, we didn't have any paper back then, so the only way you could make records and keep them forever would be to encode them on some kind of rock. They're still here. The strata layer that they came out of was, we dated to over 80,000 years BP. So based on the strata layer and the ash layers from the second to the last major Mount Rainier eruption, we're able to determine that they were deposited there somewhere around 80,000 years BP. Right? That doesn't mean they were manufactured at that time. That just means that's when they were covered up by the river. Okay? So we really don't know how old they are. But we're looking at a few different things here. We're looking at what I thought was a giant rhinoceros, and plus potentially a mastodon here with a head and a trunk, and some kind of other things, abstract shapes that I couldn't really describe. We're looking at this in what looked like some kind of elephant with a mouth open, and a little guy right there with a furry beard and a little nice Don King hairdo spearing this elephant with a spear, and you can actually see the leaf blade at the end of the spear. And we don't see that here in North America because it's Solutrean, which, you know, all the big cave drawings over in France and Germany, that's the Solutrean time frame period. They were a very advanced hominin, human sapien type culture. Invented the needle, transatlantic ocean skin boats, the whole 9 yards. So I thought maybe this is a Solutrean art deposit, and they came down the coastal route as opposed to the land-bearing sea route, okay? That was the theory, the original theory. But we began to see Bigfoot type, what we interpreted as the walking Bigfoot there, the Patterson-Gimlin film, classical one there. A side profile, I give that to Tom Cantrell. There's maybe something, eyeballs right there, and these are untouched photographs, unenhanced by the way. And with again, the type conical hat or sagittal crest here is a really interesting one. We see a profile on the head here. We see eye right here and here, eyebrows, a nose, nostril structure, mouth structure, a huge, massive no neck and shoulders, and what's very interesting is a necklace. So we could potentially interpret that to be a Bigfoot profile shot wearing some kind of necklace. The interesting symbol in the middle is the Native American spoked wheel. One could easily interpret it as that. Okay? So I got to looking at these, and you know what, they seemed kind of strange, and then I came across this. This is the only anatomically correct hybrid hominid footprint recovered from carved solid rock in the history of the world. And it's right over there. And you guys can take a look at it and hold it if you want after I get over there. It's show and tell hour, by the way. It's important that people can see archaeology and look at it and touch it and see that it's real instead of just see the pictures in the lectures, right? You have to bring it down. So if you scale this up, there's the main toe right there, second toe, third toe, fourth toe. Here's the heel right there with the classical tarsal break, and it's actually on a stone, so it's this roll. We interpret it might be a stencil of some kind, a roll stencil. It has finger holes right there, and it has a thumb hole on the back for some three-fingered, one-thumb, left-handed something. Because remember, at that point, the theory was this is maybe a Native American dig, or Indo-European dig from the Solutreans that came somewhere around that time frame, 80 to 60,000 years BP. So we're not looking at anything other than that at this point. But we're still looking at what we think are familiar images. Now, that could be just suggestions from our mind, right? Very simply. So that's another one of the reasons we have to compare it against science, and we use a process to examine this material. So we started examining, first of all, the coding that was on there, and to our astonishment, we realized this material was changed at the molecular level. It's not painted on there, it's not inlaid. It's changed within the crystalline structures of the stones themselves. And they're outlined with some kind of plasmic beam, and then the coloration is applied internally at the metallic level, at the molecular level, excuse me. Which is fascinating, actually. And which also means that they weren't baked, so they weren't heat processed. I sent some of these stones to the University of Washington and Washington State University's Department of Archaeology and Anthropology, as well as all the major Native American tribes in Washington State. And not one of them could identify any of these materials. The tooling, the actual ramifications of what we're looking at, or even potential the pigment itself. I didn't tell them that it was related to Bigfoot, obviously, or that they were encolored at the molecular level, because I wanted them to do an honest assessment and analysis, right? We call it a blind study, by the way. Another part of the dig started bringing up some very interesting things, and if you look at some of this stuff, they look very similar. This looks like, I thought, some kind of baleen type whale opening up its mouth and collecting these little golden pieces of plankton. So maybe that was a marine sponge type creature, who knows, right? Then I start looking at these other things like this and realized that, you know what, that's some kind of definable shape, and there's commonalities, and it was repeated over other examples of different stones and different colors from different locations. So we have a pattern, right? That's the first thing we look for when you're doing linguistic research or any archaeological research, is we look for patterns. And then we start to classify them with common themes, right? It's as if we can tease out some meanings or some patterns. Then we start seeing stuff like this under magnification, where it looked theoretically, remember this is theoretical here at this point, that there was some kind of collection process going on. That some kind of organisms were being collected in here and stored within the structure of these other types of shapes. Then I realized under microscopic examination that they were processing body parts from organisms that were being collected here and here. And I'll show you examples of that in other shaped structures at that point. So I was flabbergasted. I'm like, how can this possibly be? If we're looking at a library of stones that are like little USB chips and every one of them has a story, what is the story telling us? Then I started looking a little bit closer, and I started noticing golden and silver vertical and horizontal bands of what I interpreted to be light or gold pigment in the stone, which it shouldn't be there unless it's gold itself, and it's not. So once again, the molecular level had been changed, and those are colorized at the molecular level. They're not painted on and baked, okay? I also had a geologist from college look at it to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. We're not. So again, we're looking at light-type creatures. Right here, this band right here, you can see under magnification other organisms using this transportation network to move around. Including, I'll show you some of the pictures back there, what appears to be one person in some kind of craft moving along this that has kind of like an Ant-Man head setup going on there. And I'll show you. So I'm like, well, that's kind of strange. Then I started looking at these organisms, and we had what looked like to be some individual face right there, hand up like this. And right there is the little blue dog with its ears up looking right at him, and you can actually see the facial structures, the feet, the hand, the fingers, the eyes, the beard, and some kind of a headdress in gold. Okay, so I'm thinking gold, light, gold. So I'm starting to think light, some kind of transportation network, some kind of energy. We've all heard of the telluric grid and the energy grid that the animals can actually navigate by, but we can't see and we can't access. So I'm thinking, maybe is this an artistic representation of that natural earth process, right? Again, I'm looking at this one right here, and I brought these stones so you can look at them, not just the pictures. And under magnification, you're looking at a small craft transferring in a golden beam of light organisms into this area, into a ship or some kind of holding structure that's made out of organic material instead of metallic, because all the coloration you see, as soon as you get down in magnification, you see it's organisms pushing out on the skin, trying to get out. Okay? And I've got some interesting photographs. The one issue with these photographs is you're looking at, every one of those is like a million faceted diamond. So when you magnify down to take a look and take a picture, you start out with an image this big, but by the time you get down to your focal point, it's just the head of a pin. And you can't possibly get a clear picture unless you took a million photographs and then laced them all together and then flattened it out in a mural or a mosaic. There is a microscope that costs $190,000 that will do that. I just don't have that kind of money yet. So that's why you don't see a crystal clear on the whole thing. But what I try to do is flatten them out so you get the best, flattest surfaces as clear as I could possibly make them. Again, what we have here is one of those bands and small little organisms moving around inside that golden band. Here you see the same thing. You see vertical bands and horizontal bands, and this was a new one for me. You have some kind of, looks like a snakehead, theoretically, with its mouth generating some kind of white energy beam, and right here is some kind of craft with some blue-skinned individuals sliding down it. And you'll be able to see that in the pictures over in the binders. So we're interpreting this because it's not formulating with our understanding of geological structures or any type of crystalline structures within these types of rocks. So could these materials be natural? It's called differential erosion. So when a material starts to erode in the river, the underlying materials start to emerge and create patterns. But we're not seeing these brilliant types of patterns in any rocks I've ever heard of in my life. Okay? But we still have this connection, and I'm seeing patterns. I'm seeing patterns of organic structures, collection processes, discharge of body parts, and also this is what, and golden organisms or golden images, including these people that are organisms that they're collecting, theoretically. And these other types of transportation hubs, including other organisms that seem to be not only transporting themselves in, some are in ships, one-person ships, two-person ships, large ships like this, or structures, let's call them structures, holding structures, and they seem to be either speaking or communicating because they're looking at each other inside the threads, and also from thread to thread. Okay? So, then I'm looking at this stuff, and I took a few stones, the white crystals, to Bigfoot City, and put them on a gifting site that I do because I'm trying to spur some educational exchanges with whatever this phenomenon is. And the crystals were gone, and a giant napped out spear point was left that had similar hieroglyphics to what we're looking at, similar pictures. I didn't bring that with me, but the next conference I will, you'll be able to see it. It's about this big. And it was left in place of those crystals, those archaeological crystals that it took. 2 days later, on the 4th of July, I had, well, this is our first example of what I think is quantum tunneling or teleportation. Okay, this is 4 o'clock in the morning. This is just outside my house. Here's my house here. Here's what you're going to see, this deck area here. And here's my house here. There's no other houses around my house. It's all forest. And it's coming from this direction. Okay? That direction. And that's 4 o'clock in the morning, by the way. And you see a light beam here. That's my house, this part right here. And I'll show you this video so you can see the whole process as it unfolds. But again, remember the theory of seeing the light and the dark as the range of the band of that photon transmission, okay? You're going to see it vibrate, you're going to see it move, and you're also going to see it create different effects, light effects and dark effects. Always keep in mind the dark effects too, not just the light effects, okay? Are you guys ready to see that video? Okay. It's about 1.5 minutes. I'm going to show you the whole thing so you see the progression. Put on your science hats, all right, and see, remember this is 4 o'clock in the morning, and this is picked up by infrared security camera. Okay, do you see that disturbance right here? Here's the edge of it. Okay, let's just call this, okay, now we're starting to see the light open. Do you, everybody see that? That's right on my deck, right by my door. But we still have some kind of masking, something going on here. Look how bright that light is. Something's opening up behind a mask of a dark band. Okay? Now keep your eye on that. It's fluctuating. Do you see that? And it has a definitive edge, but it's also pulsating. in wave-like form. It's not steady, it's not stable. It's not a headlight, where you see the whole headlight, right? So I'm thinking, camera malfunction, right? Nada. Those are my mats, and that's part of my deck. And that's my gutter, right there. So you should see the gutter all the way out to here. Look how it pulsates. Does everybody remember that in the House of Dreams from Joe Hauser, and that energy creature that was in there, and how it picked it up and how it shined like that, brilliantly? There is some kind of opening and some kind of transmission of light photon. Okay, so I'm looking at this, the next, and I'll tell you how I discovered it. But I'm still looking at this wondering, what is this disturbance here? Okay, if my camera, which is not malfunctioning, and you'll see that in a minute, is not picking that up, then something is blocking it. What can block brilliant light like that with dark, with a ribbon like that, a border? What I discovered that something came down, and as it moved away from the camera lens over here, the light faded. And as it moved closer to that, it got lighter and lighter. Then it went dark again. So it's 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Where's the black band? Now you're going to see it in action. The actual opening of what I anticipate is some kind of, well, Stargate. Some kind of ability to move through light. There it is. Do you see that? Does everybody see that?
Yes.
And right there, there's the border of it. Okay, so you're seeing an opening of something. You're seeing in what? Watch this.
Is that a different camera angle?
It's the same camera. Look at that. Look at that.
I did see it.
That was 4 o'clock in the morning. You want to see that again?
Yes.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. Look at that. Now, except when you're in the dark and you open a door.
Would you do that again?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So, put on your scientist hats. Think about quantum light photon teleportation. Light and dark beams, right? Waves. Transportation, opening some kind of portal or Stargate. Look at that. That was my lawn chair. One more time.
Can't get enough of that.
This is in Winlock, down by Napa Vine, where they have all that Bigfoot activity. I have a lot in my yard too, by the way. So again, you see the beam right there. It's concentrating. So in my opinion, you're seeing the opening of some kind of atmospheric wrinkle. All right? And you're looking at light as the transmission device. Look at that. It opened right there. Now it's getting ready to close. Wham!
What's the dark thing between the two lights?
Let's do it again. This right here?
Yeah.
I believe that that is the dark part of the band between, like I said, the high and the low, between the highest, brightest white light and the darkest, less than black. Okay? And I'll stop that, see if I can stop it right when it does it. There it is. Okay, remember I told you about trough to trough, you have bright light, or correction, peak to peak, bright light, peak to trough, dark light. There it is, you see that?
Yeah.
So there's 2 sets of bands there, all right, that are coming together and opening, and that reflects that same exact theory of light and dark band. There it is. Does everybody see that? Okay? The camera's not malfunctioning. There's nothing in front of the full lens. And yet you're seeing an eruption of what I think is quantum photon light teleportation, or potentially a Stargate opening. Yes, ma'am?
So, in real time, that took a couple seconds?
A couple seconds, but it repeated itself. Look at that. On the same camera lens. Remember the light wave theory. Peak to peak, brightest possible light. Peak to trough, absence of light. Is that an absence of light? It's a light hole, it's a light sink. It's darker than dark. So, there's our first parallel to this light quantum theory. Okay? Does that match what the scientists say is the behavior of these photons in this environment? It absolutely does.
Mr. Townsend?
Yes.
So the items that are darkened in the light spot.
Right there, that's my lawn chair, and that is the shadow behind my lawn chair coming from that direction. And that's my deck right there. That's my yard. This is my driveway. So if you were seeing light, it would have to come down from there. The rest is covered in acreage. and trees. Yes, sir.
What came through this hole?
Some light creature came down. I know it because I'm getting this weird messaging out of it. You can't see it here, but I can interpret that as the source moves away while it's moving around there. You can see it, the intensity of the light as it comes back forward. And what it was checking out stones from the archaeological dig that I was processing and cleaning, getting ready to catalog. Some of the same stones that I had put 2 days earlier in Bigfoot City. So one second. One could theorize that whoever picked up those stones knew exactly what they were. And they were able to find me 2 days later at my house, 170 miles away. First here, go ahead, sir.
After this incident here, outside of the rocks that you just talked to us about, was there anything else that kind of changed in the environment around your house?
Absolutely. I started getting the 900-pound owl. You guys remember that? All the time. Every day. There's a hole in my sticker bushes, which are 14 feet high, where something's coming through. All the time. And it doesn't leave any tracks. My dogs, they don't even want to go past the edge of the forest. And the cat, nah, he's kind of oblivious, he doesn't care. However, again, this is an infrared camera, 24-hour security camera. Okay? Here's my gutter. You guys see the edge of my gutter right there? Okay, there's where I walk out of my house. This is 4 o'clock in the morning. It came back 2 days later and did the same thing.
So it's emanating inside of your house?
From the sky.
From the light sources?
The light sources. That's correct. So if you look at this right there, and I can back up, I'll do that in a second, and when I first started this series, I pointed out where the direction of the light had to have come from based on the shadow of the lawn chair and the position of my deck from north to south. Okay, so the only area of light could have come down would be from my driveway right here. Do you see? And the shadow would be on the other side of the chair. In this case, it came down from the sky from that area, and you can see the angle where it came down from the angle of the shadow on the chair. It came down from the sky, not from the ground. Okay, and that wasn't a flashlight. So I'm going to show that one more time, and then we're going to move on, okay? Again, we have the concentration of the beam. You can see it a lot better on my computer screen. But see, look at that. Look at the intensity of that. That is not a car light. That is not a flashlight. That's some kind of huge light from the sky. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
So did you mention where Bigfoot City was, or?
It's in Bumping Lake. It's just over the other side of the mountain right here, just up the highway from here.
Okay.
Yep, all the top dudes go there.
All the cool kids.
So,
okay.
The light came down from here. You can see the shadow on the lawn chair. You can see the driveway. And here's the direction that the light came from. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, from the forest, above at an angle. Not horizontally. So, we have an unexplained phenomenon over my house, directly related to these archaeological stones that seem to depict, one can theoretically interpret them that way, some kind of alien life forms connected to Bigfoot, some kind of ships, organic in nature, not metallic, collecting some kind of processes, processing them and discharging them in less than adequate wholeness, and then 2 days later I get this in my house. Yes, ma'am?
Have you noticed any men in black hovering around your house?
No.
Did it pay you a visit after that?
No, but I sent it out to the Forest Service like I have to do my reports every 6 months. So they don't have to come to my house. They just wait for the report. So that's part of what I have to do, is to have access to all of the behind the gates at all of the national parks. To do my Bigfoot research is to provide updates, whatever they are. Right? So I'm not an agent, I'm an educator. Okay? Because they know what's going on. We all do. All right? So, any other questions on this series? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think made the hole in the, you said, in the black, in the...
Well, what we can theorize that we're seeing in this picture is a cosmic opening of some kind of gateway, some kind of opening or wrinkle in the cosmic environment as it is organized here. My theory is that what we're looking at is some opening and something coming through and spending a few minutes there, because I cut a few pieces off of it, looking around and then leaving. And their mode of transportation is light, because you're seeing not only bright light, but black light, less than light, a light sink. And the only theory that it can account for that is quantum light photon theory at this point. Okay? Yes, sir.
Do you think it comes through those time stones?
I think those stones that I'm going to give everybody who's interested in them are signaling devices. They're like a cell phone, and that's how they found my house.
Did you cover the National Geographic study where they took a picture of the petroglyph before and then the year after, and they actually grew?
I haven't seen that. But these, in the case of our examples, they're all portable. That's a portable library. They're not on the side of a mountain. These are made to be collected, examined, and every one of them has a base that's cut on the bottom. So when you turn it, it levels itself and allows you to see the image as it was manufactured. Okay? They're not just pieces with dirt smudges on them. They're artifacts that have been worked chemically, molecularly, and also physically. And they're shaped. Okay? So we need to keep moving forward. Any other questions on this? Okay. So there's our first example of potentially that quantum light theory. Okay? And that potentially is not only transportation, but also cloaking. Okay? Also delivering mass to include zapping, to include solids, or even mental messages, or holographic imagery. So all that is an opening. Whatever product or organism got pushed through for whatever reason, who knows? It could be a wide variety. It could be more than just Bigfoot, like people are saying. There could be other things doing the same thing. All right? All right. This is one of my student series of pictures. I gave her the stones. She lives in Yelm. She's not here. We're going to call her Sierra Victor because she wants to remain anonymous. Because she calls it Bigfoot TV. She sits out in her backyard and drinks beer and watches all these occurrences happening all the time. And she has a ton more material. So you saw the video that I just showed you, the materialization. I didn't have access to that when I made this. The next one, I will show that, an actual video of what I'm about to show you, which is another opening. All right. There's two little orbs. We've all talked about that. Right here, lower one's the red one with an internal shape, and the little one with the green shape. And as you see the progression of this, the lower ones move higher, and they meet something coming down from the sky right there. Another orb. Another orb. Okay? So I've got thousands of pictures of orbs, and so does she. But you rarely ever see anything inside the orb that you can make out. They're usually clear, you can see through them, they're different shapes, different colors, they're under different circumstances, but you never see or never can recognize what's inside of them, right? I haven't. However, I talked to a Jewish PhD, I brought him out to Bigfoot City last summer, and we discussed this lens reflective refraction, and how that could potentially explain these types of images, right? Dust on the lens, etc., etc. Really, the only way you can explain this is if you have dust on the lens, all right? But that's stable, all right? It's not atmospherical. So if you went and polished the lens and took another picture, you'd see that it was dust on the lens, right? If you have some kind of energy eruption or energy display that's not atmospherically explainable, like what we're seeing here, excuse me, right here and right here. And we looked at that and he said, hey, you know, I've seen that. He's a professional photographer. He also works for the Ministry of Agriculture, which is also doing Bigfoot research through the U.S. Forest Service, and that's why I took him out. He said, the only thing I've ever seen is a cross that came through in one of those orbs, and when I examined the landscape, there was a church three ridges over that had a similar cross. So there's an example right there of lens refractive refraction, or reflective refraction, okay? So, but there's something in the environment that's very close that's creating the image, and this is just copying it and transporting it through a camera lens. But it was recognizable. It wasn't just shapes or eyeballs or something that you couldn't recognize, or just energy pulsations. Now we begin to see here a recognizable figure coming through right there. Under magnification, looks like a football player. It's got the big shoulders, no neck, pointed head, huge legs, moving through some kind of transportation. Okay, this is the first picture I've ever seen of something that we could recognize as a shape, let alone some hominin shape, coming through, again, some kind of atmospheric disturbance, and the lower picture is some kind of red energy that's pulsating around these metallic objects, including these saw blades. So again, we're seeing spectrums of light associated with some kind of atmospheric disturbance. And we're trying to understand what it is. This is during the daytime, and this was last summer, or last spring. Okay? Go ahead.
After you got your rocks.
Yes.
Okay.
And she had rocks too, before this. Okay?
And you want to give us some rocks?
Yes. With a warning. With a warning. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this was during the day. And
During the day.
You still see that. So,
And it's on this side of the tree.
Yeah, so what kind of equipment were you using?
Straight game camera attached to the side of the house in infrared. Nobody, they have thousands of these pictures. You got people walking around here, dogs and turkeys, and you got orbs everywhere around them. Blue ones, green ones that look like Saturn rings, and one that looked like there's two little pilots in it. And I looked at that and I was like, now that looks like a pilot, or some kind of organisms within it. And we're looking for commonalities, right? So I started looking at some of the other orbs, and a couple of them had the same little pilot-looking image in them, in different colors and different shapes, which one could naturally ascertain that, hey, maybe there is something there. If this is energy, it's a ship, maybe. Let's just contemplate. Let's brainstorm and see what comes up, right? Maybe that is a pilot. Maybe there is a transportation network. Maybe there are organisms coming through. Maybe they do parallel what I'm seeing on these stones. See, now it starts to get interesting. And now my students are starting to see increased activity. Big time. They have the stones. Okay? Here, I believe this is an example of what we just saw at night, only in a tighter beam, and it's during the day, so you don't see the dramatic effect. Okay? You're not seeing the dark bands, you're just seeing really light bands. Now, this may be from a different source. This may be a different node of that transportation network. This may be a different process that's able to teleportate that mass of that organism that's coming through there that we can now recognize as some kind of human-type hominin structure. Now, do you want to see what it is?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Do you really want to see what it is?
Absolutely.
All right. 5 minutes? 6 minutes. Okay, we're going to have to break through here. There it is. Does everybody see that face? There's the lips, there's the nostrils, there's the eye, there's the hand, there's the mass. That's from 10 feet away, and you know, that, my friends, is a hybrid hominin of some unclassified variety. It has gorilla-type lips and recessed nostrils and heavy eyebrows, sunken eye sockets, and a huge head. And there's its bulk and its mass peeking out from the trees. Go ahead.
Have you compared that to any of the totem poles? Any kind of?
I have, and I believe that if you look around in this room, we all are the same species, but we all look different. Different facial structures, different body structures, different body types. So what I think you're looking at is one part of the spectrum of what Bigfoot looks like. Through my tooth dental research, I've demonstrated that they've been interbreeding with us since who knows how long, but not very successfully lately because the separation of our species was so long ago, and as it splits out, the successful interbreeding or sharing genetic materials is much more difficult. But I was able to demonstrate that that happens because we had Neanderthal front teeth, and that was an expression of the last genetic exchange. Okay? All right. My other student from Wisconsin, he's sitting there unaware with 4 other people in his SUV, just came back from Bigfoot, 4 o'clock in the morning, and this apparition comes down out of the sky. Another gate opening in the middle of the night, but not a Bigfoot, but a recognizable apparition, okay? So here's a series of photographs. It starts out right there. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
And they're just yucking it up, having a good time and shooting videos and stuff because they're doing their after action. from the Kettle Moraine. His name's Jay Pachochin. He's got a new movie coming out. It's called Finding Jay. You guys are going to like it. It's going to show some of this footage and stuff in here. So, they're yucking it up, and something in the video, and I'll show it in the next conference, comes down in a liquid stream of silver out of the sky and starts to grow in their rear view mirror. Does everybody see that? Okay.
They're inside of the vehicle.
They're inside of, and they can't see it. And a cop, in the video, a cop drives right by them. He thinks maybe they're tweakers or something, right? And the cop slows down. They're all like, oh yeah, it's just a cop. You know, he's wondering what we're doing here, parked in the parking lot in the middle of the night next to the National Forest, right? Well, then this comes down out of a liquid stream of silver, out of the sky. And then disappears. There it is. There it is. A recognizable form, and it looks like a kachina of some kind. Native American Hopi. It looks like it's got a head, it's got eyes, it's got some kind of headdress on, and it's got some kind of cloak. Here's its leg structures, and maybe even a baby in front of it, or some kind of smaller version of it. And you see prismatic effect. This is Wisconsin. You see prismatic effect. Do you guys see that? Okay. That's another part of opening that sky gate. Not only do you see light and alternating light and dark bands, but you also see a prismatic effect. And that's the edges of that stargate. When you're transmitting that power and those light fluctuates, you're going to see a big range, but you're also going to see a prismatic effect around the edges. And we've seen that in some of these pictures that say, oh, this is a Bigfoot cloaking. And you see that prismatic effect. Yes, ma'am?
So the edges, is that called an event horizon?
We don't call it that. We call it something else. We call it distribution principle. And let me get right to it. So what we're looking at, in my opinion, is quantum light therapy, quantum photon tunneling transportation. I'm trying to identify this and say that this is the network, and this is the energy, and this is what I'm showing you is the actual usage of it by different organisms. Not only that one, but the Bigfoot and whatever else came down over my house, okay? And very simply, if you look at this, that's classical mechanics. If you send a transmission, it has to go over the barrier. Quantum mechanics goes right through. Not only that, these events don't have to be over a period of time. They can occur instantaneously. So it can be like a flash of a holographic image, or a flash of a teleportation, or a flash of an optical message. There it is. How much time? Can I wrap this up in 1 minute?
A couple of minutes.
All right. Where do we go from here? All right. In this conference, you've not only seen proof of Bigfoot, forensic dental impression research. You've seen the other side of the classical research, which we'll call the unexplained at this point side. We've seen all of these different types of atmospheric disturbances and phenomenon expressed by other people in this conference in their own words, but they're saying the same thing. All right? And you saw Joe Hauser's videos of that creature, energy creature, in light, on infrared, right? Coming through that little structure. And you can see some type of body structure, right? You're seeing the same thing here in real-time video at night and during the day, using the same type of transportation situation. And so what's doing it? Quantum light energy is the only thing that can explain it at this point. The types of different banding and the ability to move through those different structures instantaneously. All right? We need to keep framing and analyzing our data. We need to keep developing our hypothesis. That's part of you as citizen scientists. You look at my stuff and our stuff and say, oh, wait a minute, there might be another explanation. And then go research it. Send me a message and say, I think you're wrong, and here's why. Awesome, I love it. That's why I always invite the most skeptical people here. Because I want them to try to pick apart everything, right? Because it has to be tough, it has to be durable, it has to be presentable in an academic research conference. We need to use data-based conclusions and defend them. Okay, I just showed you a bunch of data, then I gave you a theory and a conclusion. Now I'm ready to defend my work because I took a lot of time, and I've got an applicable theory, and it explains all this material. You got something better? I'd like to hear it. If it works, we'll go with you. I don't really care. It's not about me. It's about the answer, right?
Yes.
Okay. We need to coordinate in a common language, the scientific method. Everybody was saying different things, but they were all saying the same thing. We need to learn how to use the scientific method so when we talk to each other at these conferences, we're speaking apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And we're not losing stuff in interpretation. I see this, you see that, maybe it's the same thing, but we really don't know because we're not speaking the same language, people. Scientific language, all right? Then we take that to their house, in their language, and force it down their throat. Because they're not going to do it voluntarily. We create a tipping point, and then they have to address it or they lose their credibility. They're not going to accept it. We have to force it on them. Keep open minds. We advocate for an open mind, and that's what everybody's been saying here. Open your mind. Think about the possibilities. Don't limit yourself and your thought processes to what you already know. Because we only know a very small slice of what's available, okay? Let alone what happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future. But this is one of the things that I have a real problem with haters and people that are dismissers and hoaxers and all this other stuff, because it sets back everything that we're trying to do. And it just creates animosity and competition and all these other things. And I'm interested in cooperation, education for free, and exchange it, right? So I say this, when people are critics, that's fine. Ask them substantive questions about their criticism. If they can't come up with it, dismiss it. Marginalize these people and don't participate. Participate with people that are interested in the same goals that we are, which is finding the truth. Because that's really what this is all about, folks, is we're trying to find out what's happening. It's not about what I say is happening, it's what's happening, okay? And that's why it's so critical that all of you came here, and that you come to all these events, and you exchange information with people, and you come say, listen, I had an event, I can't explain it, what can you do? All right? So thank you very much for the opportunity to present this material to you.